never know when the next second will turn your world upside down. Sometimes it's not what you see on the road that haunts you, it's what you never expected to see at all. Keep your eyes open, because the real terror always comes when you least expect it. If that just made your heart race, get ready. These stories will leave you looking over your shoulder. The fear you felt, that's just a taste. Watch till the end, if you can handle it. I've always loved the freedom of the open road. There's something about driving at night, headlights carving through the dark, that makes the world feel both endless and empty. But after what happened on Highway 54 last spring, I don't think I'll ever feel safe on a late night drive again. It was late April, and I was heading back to Kansas City after visiting my brother in Oklahoma. I'd left later than planned, and by the time I hit the state line, it was already past midnight. The highway was deserted, just me, the hum of the engine, and the occasional flicker of a distant farmhouse light. I kept the radio low, more for company than for music. About an hour outside of town, the road started to feel different. The air was thick, almost heavy, and the fields on either side seemed to close in, the grass waving in the wind like something alive. I was maybe 20 miles from the next gas station when I saw it. A car pulled off on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking in the dark. At first, I thought nothing of it. But as I got closer, I realized the driver's door was wide open, and the interior lights were on. No one was inside. I slowed down, instinctively checking my mirrors. There was no one behind me, no other cars for miles. I pulled over about 50 yards ahead, my own hazards flashing, and got out, calling out a cautious, "Hello?" No answer. The only sound was the wind and the ticking of my engine cooling. I walked back toward the car, my phone in my hand, thumb hovering over 911. The car was still running, keys in the ignition, a half-empty coffee cup in the holder. A woman's purse sat on the passenger seat, open, with a wallet and phone inside. But there was no sign of the driver. That's when I noticed the footprints, bare feet, small, leading away from the car and into the tall grass at the edge of the field. They looked fresh, pressed deep into the mud. I called out again, louder this time, but the only answer was the wind. Something about the scene made my skin crawl. I thought about following the prints, but every instinct screamed at me to get back in my car. I snapped a few photos, then hurried back to my own vehicle, locking the doors as soon as I was inside. I called the highway patrol and gave them the mile marker, describing everything I'd seen. They told me to stay put, but I couldn't. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming, like eyes were on me from the darkness just beyond the headlights. As I pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. For a split second, I saw movement in the grass, something low, crawling, almost human, but not quite. It vanished before I could focus, but the image burned into my mind. I drove the rest of the way home with my heart pounding, checking my mirrors every few seconds. The next day, I called the highway patrol again. They said they'd found the car, but no sign of the driver. No footprints, no purse, nothing. It was as if the whole scene had been wiped clean. For weeks, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to. Every time I drive that stretch of road now, I keep my eyes straight ahead and my doors locked. And I never, ever stop for hazard lights at night. I used to think gas stations were the safest place to stop on a long drive. Bright lights, cameras, people coming and going. But after what happened outside Amarillo last summer, I know better. It was late July, and I was driving cross-country to visit my cousin in New Mexico. I had been on the road for hours, the kind of drive where the landscape barely changes and the radio turns to static. By the time I hit the Texas Panhandle, it was after 2 a.m. and my gas light had been on for way too long. I finally spotted a glowing sign for a 24-hour station, the only light for miles. The lot was almost empty, just a battered pickup at the far pump and a delivery truck idling near the side. I pulled up, killed the engine, and stepped out into the thick, humid air. As I started pumping gas, I noticed the pickup's driver staring at me through his window. He didn't look away, just kept watching, his face half hidden in the shadows. I tried to ignore it, focusing on the numbers ticking up on the pump. That's when I heard footsteps behind me, soft, deliberate, crunching on the gravel. I turned, expecting to see someone heading inside, but there was no one there. Just the empty lot and the hum of the fluorescent lights. I finished pumping, nerves on edge, and went inside to grab a coffee and a snack. The clerk barely looked up, just rang me up and slid my change across the counter. As I turned to leave, he said quietly, "Don't go back outside yet." I froze. He didn't explain, just kept his eyes on the register. I glanced out the window. The pickup was gone, but now the delivery truck's headlights were off, and I could see two figures standing in the shadows near my car. My heart hammered in my chest. The clerk finally looked at me, his voice barely above a whisper. "Wait until they leave. They've been hanging around all night." I stood by the coffee machine, pretending to stir sugar into my cup, watching the figures through the glass. After a few minutes, they drifted away, disappearing behind the building. The lot was empty again, but the feeling of being watched lingered. I hurried out, jumped in my car, and locked the doors. As I pulled away, I saw the two figures reappear in my rearview mirror, standing under the flickering lights, just watching me go. I didn't stop again until the sun came up and the roads were busy. Even now, every time I pull into a gas station at night, I check every shadow, every corner, and I never trust that I'm really alone. I always thought the scariest part of a road trip would be breaking down in the middle of nowhere. But after what happened on Route 17 last fall, I know there are worse things than car trouble. I was driving from Asheville to Savannah, taking the back roads to avoid the interstate. It was late October, the kind of night where the fog rolls in thick and the trees crowd close to the pavement. I'd been driving for hours, the world outside my headlights, nothing but shifting shadows and the occasional glint of animal eyes. Around midnight, I realized I hadn't seen another car in almost an hour. My phone had no signal, and the gas gauge was dipping lower than I liked. I told myself I'd stop at the next town, but the road just kept winding through endless forest. That's when I saw the sign. Last stop gas 2 miles. The letters were faded, the sign half swallowed by vines, but it was enough. I followed the narrow road as it twisted off the highway, the trees pressing in so close I could hear branches scrape the roof. The gas station looked abandoned at first, one flickering light over the pumps, the windows dark, the lot cracked and overgrown. But the open sign glowed red in the window, so I pulled in, more desperate than cautious. I stepped out, the air cold and damp, and started to fill my tank. That's when I noticed the silence. No crickets, no wind, just the faint hum of the old light overhead. I glanced at the station door. It was open just a crack, swinging slightly in the breeze. I called out, "Hello," but got no answer. Inside, the shelves were mostly empty, dust thick on the floor. A single bulb buzzed above the counter, where an old register sat, screen glowing blue. I was about to leave when I heard footsteps behind me, slow, heavy, echoing in the empty store. I turned, but the aisle was empty. The footsteps stopped. I hurried back outside, heart pounding, and that's when I saw it. My car door was open, the interior light on. Something moved in the back seat, just a shadow, but enough to make me freeze. I forced myself to walk to the car, keys clenched in my fist. As I got closer, the shadow slipped out the other side, vanishing into the darkness beyond the pumps. I jumped in, locked the doors, and started the engine, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the keys. As I sped away, headlights caught in the rearview mirror. Just for a second, I saw a figure standing at the edge of the lot, watching me go. No car, no movement, just that silent watcher in the fog. I didn't stop again until I hit the city limits, and even then, I checked the back seat twice before getting out. Now, whenever I see a lonely gas station on a dark road, I keep driving, no matter how empty my tank is.